I'm T.R. Acha, representing NBFC sector actually. See, sales of the vehicle, for sales of the vehicle, financing is very important. But for the financing of the vehicle, comprehensive insurance is important. But most of the insurance companies for these e-vehicles, they are not including value of the battery for comprehensive insurance. So financiers are not able to finance it actually. So this is a major challenge actually. How do you see in future? How?
It's it's understandable that anybody who provides a loan has to deal with residual value, and so you want to say, I'm loaning you money for so much, and 2 years from now that asset will be worth so much. Today there has been a great deal of lack of awareness or lack of certainty about what would be the state of degradation of batteries over a period of time. Is the battery going to be worth 25% of its value after 3 years, or is it going to be worth 75% of its value after 3 years? Makes a big difference when the battery accounts for somewhere like 30 to 40% of the cost of the vehicle.
More than that.
Yeah. So this is understandably an early issue. Very fortunate, it's one of those few cases where the promise has been underestimating reality. Today we're finding from experience, particularly in the US, that a Tesla or any of these modern cars and their batteries, we expected a certain rate of degradation. In actuality, they are degrading far slower. So batteries are seemingly holding on to their ability to charge for much longer. That's one. Number two, we're also learning how to nurse batteries better. A combination of managing temperature, cell-by-cell voltage, and current draw is teaching us how, and these battery management systems are now becoming extremely sophisticated algorithmic tools that are literally nursing batteries to be preserving their life to the best we can. So it's a bit of, I think we are on the learning curve. I have no doubt that we will very rapidly progress. The one good thing is in India, we have access to knowledge almost immediately. We don't have to wait to learn this from our own experience. We can see what's happening in Norway, we can see what's happening in the US and learn from those. So I have confidence that we will get past that issue.
I am Deepak Mehta, again from the NBFC sector. All the stock of the e-vehicles, etc., but then there is another theory that with so many batteries in and so many chemicals, will that not be a challenge to dispose?
George Bernard Shaw once said that for every problem science solves, it creates 10 more. So this is a classic case where, yes, this is a problem we will have to address. Unfortunately, I think human society, through civilization, we have never thought through every idea to its entire end and say, this is what we have to do. Perhaps if we did so, we'll never do anything. I remember this lovely cartoon of a caveman and a cavewoman around the fire that they've just lit. And the cavewoman asked the caveman, "Are you sure getting out of the solar grid was a good idea?" Because before fire, all they had was solar.
Raghavan, I have two questions. I've always been inspired by Nano. Was Nano bound to die? Now that's question number one. Number two is, how do you think the driverless cars will play out globally and particularly in this kind of a driver-intensive country like India?
On the Nano, I can either give you a one-sentence reply or delve into it. It was a pet project of mine and something that I was very passionate about. Well, was it doomed to die? I think not. For the simple reason that in whatever way, if India needs weight efficient, material efficient transport solutions, the Nano could have fit that purpose. I mean, I mentioned to you about putting this 165 kilogram human being in a 1300 kilogram car. The Nano had a curb mass of 625 kilograms. So already I've cut the weight of the Swift in half. and I'm putting a single human being in a 625 kilogram car and not a 1300 kilogram car, brought it. No, I think it had a number of issues, but something that perhaps not many people know is that when we were planning the Tata Nano project, we at Tata Motors owned 1,200 acres of land in Dharwad on the Golden Quadrilateral. And I'd hoped that we would be able to make the Nano in Dharwad because we own the land, it's on the Golden Quadrilateral. We were not using that land. We didn't have to get into any land acquisition. But I think perhaps for bigger objectives, the company decided to make an investment in West Bengal. We went to Singur. And all of you know what happened with that. You know, with Mamata Banerjee, Tata was told to leave the state. The product was rushed within a year for temporary makeshift production in Uttaranchal. And for those of you with long memories, you know, in the first month after production, 3 cars caught fire. All of this was unnecessary. And, you know, history could have been different. But you know, you can't rewrite history. So that was the Nano. I've had rave reviews from European and American product designers who marveled at what the Nano was. But at the end of the day, if the product doesn't meet the test of confidence and success with the consumer, it's a failure. So, huh? Well, another long story, but most of the people who did the Nano were the people who did the platform for the Renault Kwid. And so the genes and the learnings of what was done for the Nano were carried forward in the Renault Kwid. So that's an answer to, part answer to this. To your second question was about
driverless cars.
Driverless cars. I don't have children, but I have a nephew who's very close to me, and he's today one of the key designers of driverless cars in one of the largest companies in the US engaged in this. So he won't let me see or look into much of what he does. It's secret. But from whatever scraps of information he lets me have, I can see the phenomenal complexity of what's being taken on. Today, the most reliable and the most advanced manufacturers of autonomous technology are either Waymo, which is Google, or Cruise, which is part of GM. These are the two companies furthest ahead with the technology. And some of the public domain videos, in fact, if you are interested, just Google Cruise autonomous San Francisco. You will have videos of the car in public domain driving through crowded, unpredictable San Francisco traffic. And the decisions that are being made by the car completely without any involvement of the driver or even from the base. This is autonomous decision making on the fly. When you look at it, it's mind-boggling. But it is still not enough. Because our objective is to be able to place a car in a very, very unpredictable, complex environment and not allow a threshold of accidents, because even that one pedestrian who is hurt, let alone killed by an autonomous car, is not acceptable to society. So the challenge we've set for ourselves is very high. The progress we've made is phenomenally impressive, but we're not there. But in the meantime, there are a number of players, including people like Uber or people like Tesla, who unfortunately are claiming a lot more than the car can do. And that's why we're having some rather high-profile and unfortunate accidents. These cars are not today autonomous. They should not be called autonomous. They are at best, autopilot assist or driver assist. They are not anywhere near autonomous. And the risk is that a few of these accidents could set the whole industry back because, people will say, I can't accept this. Last point, very likely the first applications of autonomous cars will be with what are called pilotless robo shuttles, where you literally get into something. Imagine something like a Tata Magic, much more sophisticated, more compact. You just walk in, and it goes in very constrained operating environment. Singapore has an industrial park where they fly these cars. You don't have the entire range of unexpected events that you would have on a city street. Paris has one along the Champs-Élysées. It's a restricted area. So we will begin to see limited applications in very controlled environments with some things like robo shuttles. And slowly, it'll be a classic case of technology mastering all of the complex decisions that one has to make. And the final walkaway is the average human driver, your driver and my driver, actually make phenomenally complex decisions every minute for hours on end.
Sir, I'm Natarajan, engineering consultant. During the course of electrification or after electrification, what we are going to do with the ICE engine vehicles what we have now?
No, I think none of this I expect to be a very rapid transformation. All these transformations happen over a period of time. I think we will phase out over a period of time, and period of time could be 20 years, 30 years. We will phase out these vehicles in favor of other vehicles, and they may continue to play a role. For example, long distance driving or long haul trucking, they may still have a role to play. In a very long future, we will continue to use cars the way people own horses today. You will take them out for a ride on a weekend, have fun with it, but it's not your primary mode of transport.
You don't need a mic, you can.
Myself, Balasubramanian. I just finished my master's. Actually, I use my voice. I just finished my master's and I'm back here. So I have 2 points. One is, you have spoken about that electrification in cars will be much farther. In terms of hybrids, like for example, the first hybrid was well priced in 1999. 20 years still we don't have whether there's a way forward in that aspect. The second part question is, all of the research in the West is centered towards batteries. For example, the energy density is a decade back was around 90 watt. We are moving right now. So, what do you think that the role of the Indian OEMs, the need for research in that area, and whether what sort of because we are at least a decade back in terms to catch up to the rest. How much more push do we need in terms of research to get in that level?
Let me take the second question first. Auto companies today have more or less given up on the idea that they can develop batteries. It's become a much more complicated game. We say lithium ion today as if that is a single battery, but actually there are so many chemistries within lithium ion. You have ferrous polymer chemical batteries, you've got manganese nickel cobalt batteries, you've got lithium titanate, you've got a whole range of chemistries even within lithium ion. And it's not going to stop there. People are talking about solid air batteries, they're talking about, and there is this holy grail for the industry. We have ultra capacitors that are great for power density but not good for energy density. We have batteries that are good for energy density but not good for power density. And we're looking for that, holy grail where you have a mixture of both very high energy density and power density, which could be completely different chemicals, completely different ways of working. This research is primarily being done by either national labs or the research labs of large companies like LG Chem, Samsung, Dow, and so on. Even in India, I think we have a good plan. In fact, we have Dr. Ramsamy here. Between the whole network of all sorts of research institutions, there is a lot of focus on what can be done with newer chemistries. I think the breakthroughs in chemistries will happen there, not with auto companies, because auto companies have basically said, you show me a good battery and then I'll start to work with it. They don't have the appetite to get into a very prolonged R&D activity with respect to developing new chemistries and new batteries. The first part of your question was related to hybrid. Well, actually, you make a good point. We have unfortunately thrown out the baby with the bathwater. Because Maruti, as a single company, came up with the so-called mild hybrid or a micro hybrid. Frankly, it is not a hybrid at all. It hardly had 0.2 kilowatt hours of storage, but they called it a hybrid. And the government felt that, wait a minute, if I'm going to give an exemption for hybrids, I have to include this product as well. Today, we have better mechanisms. We don't have to deal with axes. We can deal with scalpels, and we can do rule making and policy making to be a lot more oriented to the amount of energy that's stored on board. Your point is valid, because when you see companies like BMW and Mercedes, they're actually betting a lot on so-called plug-in hybrids. The plug-in hybrid will have an IC engine that allows you coast-to-coast driving opportunity anytime you want, but enough pure electric range to cover 50-60 kilometers. So in many European cities, they say, I don't care what you do outside the city limits, but inside the city limits you have to be zero emission. These cars are able to meet that requirement. So potentially it's a middle ground between where we are today and waiting for a fully electric solution. You're right. I don't know the organizers. I don't.
About Tata Nano car. No, my voice will be heard, there is no problem. You said that Nano lost the confidence of the consumer. So it's a failure or something else. But I beg to differ for the reason consumer psychology is totally different. I don't want to own a car as you are owning. That is the real problem. That is what I presume for the failure of Tata. Otherwise, there is no point why Maruti should withdraw 800.
So what's your question, sir?
He said it's a loss, consumer confidence loss, but is it correct? On the psychology is correct.
I will.
Questions,
Sir,
not statements.
can I ask a question? Can't you copy the example of Singapore? Make it prohibitively costly for anybody to own a car. Another thing, can we speed up the construction of dedicated freight corridors so that we will have lesser necessity for commercial trucks? We have got a shortage of hydrocarbon resources, of petroleum. We import 80% of petroleum. Why not we look at these prospects? Thank you.
Both are very, very, very valid ideas, very valuable ideas. I think we will, in one way or the other, cities in India will be nudged towards models like Singapore, Tokyo, places like this, because we don't have the space. We can't afford pollution. We have a lot of people who want to live together in close proximity. So we will have to adopt and be nudged towards policies like they have in Singapore. As far as your point about freight corridor, definitely better use of our rail network is something that is mandatory. It's imperative. Again, Venu from the Hindu group here, he's a very keen follower of railways, rail traffic and economics. There's a lot we can do in terms of improving the network. And I'm sure in many cases, either a dedicated freight corridor or dedicated passenger corridors would be, to be honest, it is absurd that we have these short city pairs, Chennai-Bangalore or Mumbai-Pune. We have so many flights between them, and flights are terribly inefficient. They ought to be very quick rail connectivity between these kinds of city pairs. So we have in India a huge legacy with railways. We seem to have kind of lost momentum, and we have to bring it back up. Look at the shame of what happened with Train 18. We produced an indigenous, reasonably fast train that we should have just multiplied and made part of the entire network. But now it's caught in all kinds of scandals and red tape. So it's a shame what's happening to railways, but it's a very, very promising mode. I think